My name is Bella. I'm just your average housewife, married for 2 years. Until I turned 27, I had pretty much zero luck in the love department. I went to an all-girls private middle and high school, followed by an all-women's university. After graduating, I worked as a receptionist at a big corporation where, unsurprisingly, all my colleagues were women. In my social circle, it was the norm for people to get invited to parties by business executives, but not for me. I never attended such gatherings. The reason was simple. Whenever I talked to men, I became so nervous that I couldn't even speak. I often received compliments on my appearance and got invited out a few times. I had dinner with some kind-hearted guys, but in the end, they'd say, "You're pretty, but there's not much else to you." Then it happened. My destiny knocked on the door. "Bella, will you go out with me?" That's what Lex, an employee from one of our client companies who always registered at my desk, said to me. People around us speculated we were dating since he would only give his contact info to me. But that wasn't the case. Whenever he tried to engage me in conversation, I just gave polite smiles like I did with everyone else. I truly thought I was destined to be single forever. But then, his confession changed everything. Can we maybe just start off as friends?" Caught off guard, that was my reply. And yet, he nodded so eagerly. It was as if his head would fall off, and he entered the office still smiling. This was a first for me. Until now, it had always been guys with clear, ulterior motives like, "Want to have dinner? Or free tonight?" But with Lex, I sensed no such intentions, just pure affection. I was so thrilled. I went out with him a few times. Though I still nervous and not much of a conversationalist, he accepted me for who I was. And that's when I knew. "Lex, would you like to be in a relationship with me?" He was overjoyed, even to the point of tears. This all happened 2 years ago on Christmas. At that time, I felt extremely happy, thinking I'd be blessed forever with such a loving person. But the crack in the facade came when his company went bankrupt. 2 years later, I am now 29. "Lex, you should probably wake up now." I called to my still sleeping husband, put on my shoes, and leave the house. Right now, I'm the only one bringing in money for our household. My husband's company went under 6 months ago, and he's been jobless ever since. He's been job hunting, but it's been rough. Not only is the economy bad, but his industry is also saturated. Even if he gets an offer, it's often for a take-home salary of just $2,000, making it difficult for him to commit to changing jobs. Despite all this, I continue to support him. Our love isn't so superficial that it would fade just because of unemployment. My salary has always been modest. We've never lived a life of luxury. We reside in a 2-bedroom rental apartment that's over 30 years old. It's not a secure building, and it's a 30-minute walk from the train station, but I was willing to compromise on many things to continue our life together. I suspected my husband still couldn't move on from the shock of his company going bankrupt. He had a few job offers, and I patiently waited, believing he'd find a good match and recover emotionally. But my hope was fleeting, and he continued to deteriorate. He even started taking his stress out on me, sometimes raising his hand in anger. He didn't leave any lasting marks, and I thought he must be suffering more than me. So I endured it, wanting to be supportive. Then a few days later, he finally landed a new job. He gave up on his previous industry and switched to a completely different one. The new place was willing to hire him despite his lack of experience, so he took the job. When he got it, I was relieved, thinking I wouldn't have to be his punching bag anymore. I'd wondered if he was becoming abusive, but it seemed like it was just a phase. Now he's working hard at the new company and even got promoted to team lead. A year has passed since then, and I turned 30. I was thinking about having kids soon, but the loving man I married seemed to have vanished.
Hey, I told you I like toast. Why did you make pancakes? And if you're gonna serve fruit, at least remove the pit.
My husband started getting angry over the smallest things and began saying awful stuff. Really, do you have to speak like that? You're an adult, Lex. Take out the pit yourself, I retorted, losing my patience. He responded by slamming his fist into the wall, intimidating me. I'm not confrontational, but I know instinctively that his behavior is emotional abuse. Lately, I've been careful not to provoke him, but we've been fighting a lot, and I'm emotionally drained. The breaking point for me was when he took it out on me. The pressure of his new job seemed to be the root cause. He got promoted to team leader shortly after proving his worth. Not everyone's telling him he's on the fast track to becoming a department head. Unable to bear this new pressure, he started lashing out at me, the easier target. Actually, I quit my job when I turned 30 to become a housewife. I'd always planned to leave my receptionist job in my 30s to pursue something I truly wanted to do. My husband knew this, so I retired as planned at 30. But it seems he doesn't like it.
In this day and age, women need to work too. I can't support both of us on my salary alone, you know? Do you even appreciate who's providing for you?
He complains while eating, then grabs his bag and leaves for work. When he was jobless, I was the one supporting him. So why am I the one being blamed now? That was when I began to feel distant from him emotionally. One day, I returned home to find unfamiliar shoes at the door. To my surprise, my mother-in-law was lounging in the living room. "Oh, Mom, what are you doing here?" When I approached her, my mom flatly said, "Didn't Lex tell you? I'm moving in here from today." I had never heard anything like this. Later, I found out the reason was that my father-in-law had passed away and my mom-in-law was feeling lonely. So my husband had suggested she moved in. Of course, no one consulted me. As I stood there stunned, Mom-in-law ordered me to start making dinner. A homemaker's worth is proven by serving her family, so get on with it. Confused and frustrated, I went to the kitchen to make dinner anyway. Then as the food was nearly ready, mother-in-law came in and said, "Lex hates stewed burgers. This is garbage." She dumped the almost finished dish into the trash. I was sitting inside, but oddly words failed me when I was confronted by this unexpected situation. Unable to speak up, I watched as my mom-in-law caused a scene. And then my mother-in-law started rummaging through the fridge and began cooking without asking. Finally, regaining my composure, I said, "Hold on, Mom. I planned meals for the week and bought groceries accordingly." Just as I said that, he dumped flour on my head. Coughing from the flour, I continued to watch her make her dish and then demand I clean up. My husband eventually came home and was delighted to see the meal.
"Oh yes, this is the kind of food I want. No need for salads. Fried stuff is the best."
Ignoring me, he happily sat down to eat with Mom. At that point, my heart felt like it had been smashed and painted over the black ink. From then on, the daily harassment from mother-in-law and the emotional abuse from my husband continued. I felt there was no place for me in this home. And even though my husband has pressed for intimacy, under the circumstances, I naturally couldn't accept. I had been avoiding getting pregnant, even though I'm already 30, because I don't want a child with this abusive man. Then finally, the last straw broke. My mom-in-law said she was feeling unwell and asked me to drive her to the hospital. I didn't want to spend time with her, but I couldn't just leave her unwell. So I begrudgingly drove her to the hospital. But when I went to pick her up, a social worker called me into a separate room. "You must be having a tough time doing all the housework and childcare alone, but taking it out on your husband and mother-in-law isn't good," she said. Apparently, mother-in-law had been claiming that I caused her bruises from a fall. Worse, she'd been going to the hospital multiple times and had consulted about me every time. It seems she had chosen today to deliver the final blow. The social worker, not knowing the whole story, just blamed me. You should take better care of children and the elderly. All the while, our family doesn't even have kids. I reached my limit when I was told I might need psychiatric help. I'll sue you for violating my rights. I'm the one being abused here, not the other way around. I showed evidence for my husband's abuses and the burn marks caused deliberately by mom-in-law. The social worker said she'd need to confirm this with mom-in-law, but I refused and left the hospital on my own. Soon after, my mom-in-law and husband returned home. Apparently, mom-in-law told my husband that I'd been mean to her. Shaking my husband said,
"You're parasite leaving of me. How dare you abandon my mother?"
I don't know what kind of story my mom-in-law spun for you, but judging by her fake tears, she lied again. I was tired of correcting her, so I walked out of the house ignoring both of them. That day, I didn't return home and spent the night in a business hotel. Thankfully, I had my wallet and cell phone, and I could easily buy a charger. I decided not to go back home for a while and ignore both of them. But one day I was walking near the house and ran into a woman in her 50s living across from our apartment.
Was getting worried. Haven't seen you around. Also heard from your mom that you and your husband are going on vacation for a week or so.
Hearing that, I couldn't help but let out a dry laugh. But then I thought, if not now, when? I immediately contacted a moving company and asked them to help me move out as soon as possible, even if it was a bit more expensive. Luckily, I didn't have much stuff, and the movers arranged to send everything to my parents' house in just 3 days. Let's see how my clueless husband and his mother, who have no idea how much I've contributed to our home, react. They belittle me without knowing anything, and I won't forgive them. I muttered as I faced our empty house, and then I went back to my parents' home. A few days later, my husband called me.
"Hey, Bella, where are you? Your room is empty."
My husband, catching wind of the situation, kept demanding to know where I was. None of your business, I told him. By the way, I've already filed out the divorce papers since you've threatened divorce before. Just sign and submit them. I hung up the phone and blocked his number. And so, a peaceful life began. I woke up, did yoga, prepared breakfast, and sat down at the table with my parents. Lunch with mom and dinner as a family again. I felt so normal, yet it was a comfort and happiness I hadn't felt in a long time. My parents were surprised when they received my things but welcomed me warmly. Things took a turn when my husband found out I was at my parents' and waited for me nearby. I tried to run when I saw him, but he caught up and grabbed my arm.
"Bella, let's go home. The house is a mess without you."
His grip tightened, and I yelled,
Help me!
A high school boy in his sports uniform happened to be passing by and came to my aid, and a nearby businessman called the police. With the police there, my husband retreated quietly. But as expected, my raging mother-in-law stormed into my parents' house.
How dare you humiliate my son in public? What a disgrace you and your family are!
Finally, I held my father back from confronting them and said. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was outside our place, screaming threats and even mentioning defamation lawsuits. My dad was about to lose it and confront her, but I held him back. It's okay, I'm ready to settle this. I called my husband, who noticed the incoming call while next to mother-in-law and boldly said, I know you're cheating, and I have evidence. I'm going to sue you for abuse and get a settlement when we divorce. Hearing this, my husband began to panic. In truth, I had hired a detective to gather evidence after hearing rumors about him going to a hotel with a co-worker. So I had ample evidence of his infidelity. I had even visited a hospital and secured a medical certificate just in case they tried something. I had also recorded conversations to have evidence if needed. I planned to confront my husband and his mother once I felt emotionally ready, but I won't be quiet when they insult my parents. I know my mother-in-law has been taking money from my wallet. Also, ever since I left, I heard the house is in horrible state, even smelling bad. You're getting complaints from the neighbors, aren't you? Hearing this, my husband was at a loss for words. I got this information from a neighbor who told me my husband and his mother were out of town. Apparently, they've been failing at basic chores like sorting the trash, and the house has turned into a dump. Also, I heard there are complaints with the property management about the loud arguments they have daily. So maybe now my husband realizes how much I contributed to our household and wants me to come back. But it's too late. I'm not coming back. Live happily ever after with your beloved mom. After saying this, I hung up the phone. Shortly after, my mom-in-law tried to kick down my front door. I called the police and they were both arrested. I later learned from my neighbor that they hadn't addressed any of the complaints through the management company. Eventually, the drama got so bad that it emptied out the entire apartment complex. The management finally took legal action against both of them, ignoring complaints, not paying rent, and disrupting business. They faced a lawsuit seeking damages. In the end, they were ordered by the court to vacate and pay damages. Now, they're blacklisted in the real estate market, unable to rent anywhere. Turns out, the reason for the unpaid rent was my husband making a costly mistake at work, leading to a pay cut. Unable to find another place in the area, he quit his job and moved far away. And yet again, he hit another roadblock in finding new employment. He ended up homeless, which led his mother to shoplift. She was arrested for injuring a store clerk who confronted her. I found out about this through online news. Beyond that, I don't know and don't want to know. After the divorce, I started working in my dream cafe. I met and became friends with a colleague who is 5 years younger than me. At 34, I remarried. By 40, we opened our own dream cafe, and now I'm pregnant. It's a late life pregnancy, but I've never been happier.